G'day everybody, I'm Scott Poynton and welcome to another Kui podcast. And today we're going to talk about the role of values in no deforestation policies. And we're talking with Roisin Mortimer. Roisin has recently completed a Masters in Agro Ecology, and she's very interested in looking at the role of values in addressing environmental challenges. She did this study while she was working here at TFT as an intern for 6 months, and now she's working with us full time. The big question for Roisin was that people seem committed to stopping deforestation, but it's still happening. And so she wanted to explore the role of values and what was going on. She looked at commercial values, company values, personal values, and ecological values, and she looked at where the no deforestation policies come from with respect to these values. How are these 4 different values integrated into the policies, and how do they influence policy implementation? I think her findings are very interesting. I think they're groundbreaking, in fact. We need more research, but this really is the first time that someone has stopped a moment to have a look at the role of these values in these policies and helping them to make them effective. As I said, I find her studies to be absolutely fascinating, and I hope you will too. How are you, Roisin?
Very well, thank you, Scott. How are you?
I'm good. And in fact, we've been looking to talk to each other for some time, but haven't been able to find the moment, but we finally have. I'm very interested to talk to you about your studies. Just a bit of background. Roisin worked for TFT, the Forest Trust, for about 6 months, I think, Roisin, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And while she was doing that, she was also studying for a master's degree. And as part of her master's, she looked at values and the role that values play in business decision-making. I don't know if I've completely got that right, but you can fill us in a second. And she made a presentation about her findings to us here, and I found it so fascinating about the role that values play that I thought we need to get this out there, and hence the idea of a podcast. So where did you study, Roisin? Tell us a bit of background about the study.
So I have just completed a Masters in Agro Ecology, and this was a Masters with 2 universities. The university in Lyon in France, it's called ISARA. It's like an agricultural engineering school, and a university in Norway, which is the Norwegian University of Life Sciences. And so in this course on agroecology, it's really about innovative ways to address complex environmental and social challenges that we face today. So it's really about trying to understand systems, interactions, ways to engage with people and prepare you with the tools to face these challenges. It's not so much about actually studying soil science or meteorology or the technical side.
Subject.
It's more about the ways you could address these problems, and then you can choose which angle you want to take the Masters.
And so which angle did you take it?
Well, I came into the Masters with a background always nicely balanced with the ecological sciences, and then very interested in social aspects. So I'd done a bachelor in ecology and a bachelor in international relations, and I was still trying to find that way to cross these over. So then when I was studying in France in ISARA, I came across the Forest Trust, and I got put in touch with TFT, with here, and was really fascinated by this approach of looking at values as a way to address environmental problems. And so I started looking at this, and I thought that could be something that really interests me, and it's something I've had a look at a lot of different environmental philosophy themes previously, and I thought this was a really good new approach because my main interest is in issues of deforestation, and obviously with TFT we work a lot with companies and deforestation, but I thought there's a lot out there already on tools and technologies how to address this problem, and there's all these great policies that have been made about no deforestation, and I really wanted to look at something a bit new and out of the norm of why these policies aren't today leading to no deforestation, because if you look at the news, you can see quite clearly that there is still deforestation happening today.
Yeah, and so I might not have framed your study topic exactly right. I mean, what was the title of your thesis that you put together?
Yeah, so you were pretty close.
I thought I had a sense I was, but I don't always get these things exactly right.
Yeah. So the title is The Role of Values in No Deforestation Policies.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was specifically looking at the policies And I looked at the role of commercial values, company values. So that's where you were talking about the business values, and ecological values and personal values.
Right.
And I looked at the role of these. I sort of tried to look at it with three main research questions. One was about where do these values, or where do NDPs come from with respect to values?
No Deforestation Policies.
Yeah, thanks. How are these 4 different values integrated into the policies? And then how do they influence policy implementation?
And how did you go about it? I think you spoke to a lot of our TFT members, maybe some other companies that weren't TFT members, I'm not sure, but give us just an overview of how did the research unfold?
To start with, I talked to a lot of people internally at TFT and contacts from those people with other researchers or people from not-for-profits, from research institutes, to get as many ideas and contacts as possible. And then I reached out to a lot of these people some of them were TFT member companies, and some of them were other companies that had some contact with somebody that I spoke with.
You had some contacts.
And I ended up conducting 27 semi-structured interviews with 14 different companies that have no deforestation policies, and with 6 different either NGOs or research institutes.
Okay.
And the reason that doesn't add up to 27 is obviously because some people came from the same company but in different areas. So, for example, public affairs, and the other person might have been from sustainability, or different commodities. So somebody who might have been working on palm oil no deforestation policy, and then someone from the same company who was working maybe on a sugar no deforestation policy. And
people at all levels in the company? I mean, did senior managers, or where were the people located in terms of the hierarchy of the company?
Yeah, so I was really lucky that I managed to get some really good contacts who were quite senior in these companies. So that was quite good for looking at this aspect of company values. I spoke with some CEOs, with chief environmental officers or sustainability officers, with the respective sustainability leads in these companies. So mostly people further at senior management levels, and then some people maybe just managing the sustainability policy for that commodity in the company. So it wasn't a specific range in the company.
So lots of discussions, lots of phone calls and follow-up emails. What did you find?
Yeah. And I'll just add, I did also do an analysis of the written company policies to look at company values, and the no deforestation policies to look at if values appear in a written text differently to in the interviews. Okay. Yeah. So I guess...
Lots of juicy findings. I was excited by your presentation, so share those with us.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously the disclaimer is that I did only talk to 27 people, and that it was a lot more from the palm oil area. Okay. But I think you'll see in reports about progress on no deforestation policies that there have been a lot more made in palm oil than in other commodities to date. Yeah, so that was a normal kind of bias, and I'm just representing my findings.
That's fine. That's fine. Yeah. No, for me, it's, these are indications. We're not saying these are definitive conclusions that the world should suddenly follow. But for me, it was, I remember talking to you before you decided on your thesis topic, and I was fascinated by this idea because I don't think anyone's really looked at it. The values... The values-based policy started to emerge when Nestle came out with their no deforestation policy in 2010. They were the first. Then you had Consumer Goods Forum making statements overall, not for the Consumer Goods Forum as opposed to individual companies, later in 2010, December, I think. And then there was a progression of companies that went down this path. And really in 2014, we saw an explosion. That really came after Wilmar's policy in December 2013, because I think a lot of companies felt, well, now that Wilmar's gone, they could make their own policy because there was a good chance that they would get the palm oil they wanted. They wouldn't make a policy that then they couldn't actually deliver on. This was my sense. And so in 2014, when Wilmar went in December 2013, there was a great, flood of these policies. I heard recently, something like 750 companies or something now have such policies. But as you said, the deforestation is ongoing, and they are values-based policies. But I think, like anything, the question for me is: are they just written on paper, and what are the companies actually doing about them? And I think your research is, as far as I know, your research is the first research that I've heard that anyone's actually looked at specifically this question of the role of values and what role that's playing in terms of implementation of these policies that, started to really come only in the last few years. And I think the people in academic institutions are now starting to look at these things and saying, okay, they've been around long enough. We can have a look at these things and the effects. So I think your research is hugely timely. We don't, as you say, it's not definitive. Let's not draw too many conclusions because it is a small sample. But it's an interesting sample because you're working with companies that have been doing this work for some time. So let's hear it. What did you find?
Great. Yeah. So I guess my first question was about where do NDPs come from and which values are initiating NDPs appear. And for me, for the people I spoke with, I really found that it was this value protecting commercial values in the company, largely related to risk mitigation. And that's what I found as driving NDPs being created. But I definitely found that there are personal values and there are company values that are very much aligned and that influenced and they were drivers of policy creation as well. And people were quite keen to talk about these. Mm-hmm. And I think they need to be acknowledged more because they are there. But as far as an actual driver, if I asked, these values were existing for many years. So why was it that in 2014 or 2015 or 2012, you decided to put that on paper? Oh, it was because of the campaign and because of this. Mm-hmm. Or it was because other companies were doing it. So I think that was a very key, interesting first finding because it wasn't clear in saying it can only be commercial values driving, but it was saying that today the majority of policies, the reason that they got published in these last few years was largely related to a risk factor.
Right.
Yeah. And then as far as how a value is actually integrated into the policy, so you've got your vague policy on paper and then how you, when that actually formulates onto a piece of paper, what values are integrated. I again found that the majority of values integrated are related to commercial aspects, and that's not surprising because companies are set up to protect commercial values and to put these values in paper. And I think a lot of companies have been struggling with how to integrate these environmental values into a commercial structure. And so they, put KPIs around certain aspects of the NDP, and those obviously favor values of risk mitigation and values of, I guess they value being able to really target specific objectives. And it's hard to really publish anything or make anything concrete that is integrating, say, even integrating the company values can be difficult.
Let alone personal, more emotionally held values.
Yes, yeah. And again, that's normal. It's not, and I found this throughout the research is that, people are, and I think you've found it in your work with trying to engage with values in companies, is that people are scared to talk about them. They are personal and it's not normal to talk about personal issues in a professional setting, and we get told to keep boundaries. And I think when it comes to issues such as deforestation or human rights or child labour, it does get personal. And I think that's one thing that we need to stop trying to differentiate something that shouldn't be differentiated.
It was a couple of months ago now you shared the presentation, but I think you were finding that those personal values were there. They were strongly there with some people, more strongly than others. But my sense was that you were finding that they were starting to make a stronger appearance into the discussions. And whereas the policies may have been formed really for commercial reasons, these personal values are starting to make an appearance and people are becoming a little bit more courageous about putting them out there. That might be a generalisation. And I guess I think you found some companies where they were more strongly present than in others. But this overall sense of we've got to do this to protect ourselves is the overriding thing. But this question of we've got to do this because it's the right thing is also present and coming more strongly. And I think you talked about this growing formation of sustainability teams. I mean, they're there, but perhaps a stronger voice that people are listening to these people more because of these personal values. Have I got that right?
Yeah. So that's that kind of third research question, which was more about how are values influencing the actual implementation of the policy? And that was where I really found that personal and company values and values of protecting the environment or having sustainable practices, all of these values were having a much more of a role in that implementation phase. And so, despite maybe the policy was created as a risk mitigation policy, and maybe that being a big factor in the way that the policy is set up, when I talked to these people, you could see that and they would talk about it, they would talk about how when they visited a plantation or they met this person or they had this experience, that they then held on to that, and that drives them in their work. And they said that, or they would also talk about their CEO being driven and how that has an influence. And I think that sort of led me to this concept that I think about a lot, about commitment versus compliant. And that's where it comes down to, if people want to be compliant and stick with what's on paper, then it can remain about risk mitigation and about protecting commercial values of the company. But if people are really committed personally, then they can really implement these policies to the maximum. And I think I also saw changes in business structures. I think you were referring to that, where, we've come a long way from, okay, maybe we can employ one person that's role is to look at sustainability. Okay, now we're going to have a team. There's actually a lot of companies I spoke with now, not only do they have a team, but on their CEO board, they have a chief sustainability officer who sits with the lead executive team in those big decisions. And they also are putting sustainability teams in amongst with their procurement or their operational teams in the same room. And people talked about this a lot. So it seems to be having an impact and showing that people's personal values, which have led them to either end up in a sustainability team or to be in a buying or operations or a procurement role, by putting these people and mixing them together, then I guess the values wear off on each other. And then that helps everybody sort of want to implement this policy as best they can, rather than feeling that it's segregated.
Yeah, it's those guys over there versus us over here.
Exactly. Yeah, which people talked about that a lot. Yes. And I guess in the companies that haven't yet integrated them more, that's still the present day. And other people talked about that, saying that's how it was before. Mm-hmm. And now I have people in procurement who turn around on their chair and they ask me, can I do this? Or is there something I need to think about before I do this? Because
they're sitting in the same room.
Yeah.
Whereas before they were at opposite end, well, perhaps the sustainability team didn't exist, but now that it exists, they're actually now in the same room. Yeah. And I think you mentioned that the companies were looking at these different organisational ways of bringing it into the foreground more and actually putting these teams in the same room as a conscious decision by company leaders.
Yeah.
Yeah. You talked to companies and you talked to NGOs. What differences did you find in the perspectives of the two groups?
It varied. I think I said this before, but companies they're designed generally to be a business, whereas NGOs are designed to particularly work towards an issue or a particular theme,
environmental or social goal.
And so they have different mandates,
right?
And they have different objectives. So it's normal that they will see things in a slightly different way. And of course, most the people I talked to, some of them I had met in person, or when we conducted the interview, it was the second or third time I'd spoken with them. But most of them, I was just meeting them. So they often would give me their professional version, and maybe personally they would have said different. Mm-hmm. But as far as how overall companies and NGOs or research institutes responded, I guess companies would be quite ready to say, yes, this is our company value. We've had this for a long time. The policy is just publishing what we have anyway, and thinking that having the policy got them off the hook.
Right.
And I know that they're working really hard, and I know that it's a huge, huge, huge issue that goes beyond sometimes just what they can do, because it's also influenced by what people in those forests want to do with their land, what the governments are doing, what other pressures there are. But I did sense sometimes a sense of this, compliance or complacency with, we're doing a pretty good job and it's good.
Yeah, it's enough.
And I thought, well, yeah, but this is hard times and there's huge amounts of forests that are still being cut down, and I guess it's not enough.
It's not enough. You've got to go beyond.
Whereas, and I guess NGOs are really seeing that, and maybe for them it's harder to, and that's why I found myself in quite a good position to see both sides. I guess if an NGO isn't knowing what the company is actually doing, then they'll just see what they're not doing.
Right.
Which is good, because then they can keep putting that pressure on. And a lot of the companies admitted that it's that pressure that drove them to do that little bit extra.
Yeah.
So it's good. But I think I did really see a need for greater collaboration and communication. I think will help move on from this kind of head-to-head
antagonistic approach,
seeing everything in different ways and one complaining about the other, when everyone I talk to, they were all people. We all see the problems are more complicated than that. And so if we could get out of these sort of stereotypes of the bad business and the campaign NGO fighting, then maybe we could find a solution together. It sounds very idealist, but it is what I saw and what I felt when I listened to the different sides.
Yeah, well, I don't think it's idealist at all. I mean, I've been urging such things for a long time, and what I found fascinating about your research was that it really did confirm, well, we shouldn't use too strong language or all the disclaimers, but it supported the idea that, people getting together and talking to each other is a good way to go. I mean, and that goes within the company, getting the sustainability teams, talking to the procurement teams. Yeah. But, it was really interesting for me, the other aspect of this, and I'm having a feeling that we've jumped from finding 1 to finding 3. So if we've missed out any findings, we'll come back to those. But if we haven't, terrific. But it really struck me when you made the presentation that if the policy started with a risk management compliance mentality, and this more personal and company values approach was emerging over time with the implementation, and your sense that companies and NGOs really need to talk to each other more. My sense was that the fact that NGOs keep beating up on the companies when there's a breach of the policy, they're sourcing from a company that the NGO finds to be deforesting. And the typical approach is to say, you're a dodgy guy, you're not implementing your policy, you're an evil company, it's all just greenwashing nonsense. And the companies rush to find out what's going on, and that sometimes they ditch the supplier. And what we're seeing in our discussions with our members is they're very, very ready to ditch any company, drop suppliers that they think could be a risk to their policy. And of course, what we find is when that happens, the company carries on deforesting. You don't change anything. So actually engaging with these companies that are doing deforestation is really what's needed. But if the company with the No Deforestation Policy is getting beaten up every time they're found to have a company in their supply chain that's in breach, the risk management response is to get rid of those people and to disengage. And so it really struck me when you presented your findings that if the NGOs and the companies could really get together and say, look, we found this company, you are buying from them, they are doing these practices, what can we together do to sort this out and see if we can put pressure on these guys to stop deforestation? It struck me that we might make more progress, that those personal values of not wanting to stop, because the NGOs tend to operate more, my sense is, from more of a personal value place. We just don't want to see deforestation. But I think they're there in the companies too. But if they keep getting slapped around the legs every time someone breaches their policy, they're just going to stay in that risk management place. And I think the risk management and compliance space is the space of death. They're not going to, if they can't get beyond risk management, which is where certification has them, we're not going to solve this problem. So this was very insightful, I think. I really got that from your research. And I wonder if you can sort of share with me your thoughts on that, that this idea of helping the companies emerge from this predominantly commercial risk management place into our personal values need to be leading in the implementation of these policies.
Yeah. I would like to elaborate on that. I did talk about that. It's mostly related to that second finding that the way the policies have been designed, so not just the original what drove them to be on paper, but the way they kind of got put together was largely influenced by prioritizing commercial values through literature research and also through the analysis of my findings. I did sort of attribute that to a quick fix approach,
right,
based on quick responses. We've got to respond to the media, respond to the pressure, and that this quick fix approach that is talked about in a lot of literature, it doesn't allow time for reflection, which is generally what's required to implement personal and company values. And that
to go deeper.
And so to allow those values, which I talked about, how do we create the space to allow these values to surface? We need space. And you see it in personal everyday situations. When someone quickly attacks you, you respond with whatever the first thing or whatever you're used to saying. Whereas if you have time to let it sink in, think about it and reflect and then act, you can act from a place that's more true to your personal or organizational values. So that's what I did find. But as regards to the collaboration side, I do think that collaboration is key, and that was a key finding. However, I do still think that NGOs have their role to. I think that the role that they're playing is an important one, and that needs to continue. But for me, it would be more about the company to be more responsible for how they react. That they don't need to they can react by communicating calmly. They don't need to
knee-jerk reaction
respond, and they're probably not going to lose a whole heap of their profits if they don't drop that supplier, or maybe they are a little bit, and maybe that's part of the price they pay for doing the long-term right thing, reflecting and taking in the long term, they will win by doing the approach that is true to their company values. Because all of them, if you read their company policies, and the CEOs that I spoke with or the people who'd been in these companies a long time, they said that these values are in place and they do reflect on them when they can.
When they get the moment.
When they get the time. So I do think that campaigning can put companies in maybe in a bad space to react. But I also think, and this is related to the concept about commitment versus compliance, I think commitment, that means taking responsibility. And it means all of us taking responsibility. So sure, NGOs take responsibility for thinking about, if we do that, how is the company going to react? But also the company taking responsibility and not putting the blame on the NGOs or the blame on this or that or the other, and just choosing to do the right thing.
Yeah, it does always seem to come down to a dichotomy. Black, white, yes, no, wrong, right. And, the world's not like that, really, in the real world. And unfortunately, I think that, I agree with you, I think the role of the NGOs to get us to this place, without the NGOs, we wouldn't be in this place. Yeah. There wouldn't be no deforestation policies. That said, I think that we need to go beyond where we are now. We've got to keep moving. And as we've seen with some of our members, when we started, we were dealing with one or two people in the sustainability space. And thankfully often with CEOs as well who are leading these processes. But you look at some of the companies that we're working with now, and they've got 300 people working on sustainability. Still they get beaten up and told they're rubbish and not doing enough. And, they've invested tens of millions of dollars in programs, in staff to tackle these issues. So I think keeping the pressure on is important. I think the NGOs do a good role there. But I think finding sometimes, instead of whacking people around the back of the legs with a stick every time something goes wrong, trying to understand why it's gone wrong, how do we help the companies respond really from a more personal way? Because I honestly feel that, if we stay in this risk management place, we're just not going to make it. No. We've got to go beyond that, and we've got to, because then if they're operating from more personal values, they'll probably spend a little bit more time checking out a supplier before they engage. And they'll try and work with suppliers to say, look, we can buy from you, but you need to look at these practices because we can't be buying from you if you're chopping down forests. So overall, I firmly believe that more dialogue across the whole supply chain, across the whole thing is absolutely desperately needed. And it just sounds to me that your findings really confirm that.
Yeah. But you did mention this before, but definitely between companies in the same group, like between traders who are all trading in palm oil, who are all having the same problem, from what I can see, they don't really seem to be talking to each other.
Right.
And they can't address these problems on their own. I mean, not even a company who may have huge land concessions in a country, they still can't tell the government or the people, or they don't have the mandate to tell them anyway, but also they wouldn't have that influence. But if all of the industry can communicate and think about what compromises are going to be needed, what's going to be needed from them as a whole, and not saying that a consensus needs to be reached, because otherwise we'd sit around tables talking forever.
That sounds like certification.
Yes.
It's not sure exactly that's what we need.
I think, exactly. Like accepting we can do our different things,
yes,
and say, okay, we don't agree, so we're going to do it this way, that's fine. But still talking about it, because when you can identify you want to do that, we want to do that too, do it together, you're going to have a much more bigger impact. And I think collaboration and communication just came out over and over in all different, within a company, between companies, between NGOs, and with civil society as well. Collaboration
and communication. Have we got the essence of what you found?
Yes.
What do you think, the last question, what do you think we need to do next? I mean, for me, as I've said to you, I think we have to find a way for you to keep this research going. Because I think we learnt so much, and very much looking forward to your publication of your thesis, and if that's in blogs or peer-reviewed papers, hopefully both.
Yeah.
But really looking forward to that, because I honestly believe you'll inform the audience, and they want to be informed. I think people want to see these findings. So beyond additional research, what do you think we can do to try and help put some oxygen into the emergence of these personal values and this communication and collaboration approach that you found is being called for so much?
Yeah. Well, I think already continued research that involves the companies will help put this on the agenda. If they see people are interested in how are we incorporating our company values into this, or how are we acting on our company or personal values, that will help put that on their agenda. But as well as that, I think as TFT and as other organizations who are working with these companies, asking these questions and encouraging a safe space to talk about them. But also, as I said, companies can choose to talk about them. It's not all about having a safe space, but asking those questions and trying to encourage the right amount of time for a good response. So
giving a bit of time of reflection.
We don't have a lot of time, and there is this sense of urgency, and that's important to maintain. But at the same time, it's not worth doing something just for the sake of doing something.
And if it keeps people in that risk management place, we're not going to make it, are we?
No, and that was what drove me to this research topic was, all the major companies, at least in palm oil, have made these no deforestation commitments. And then in Brazil, you've got the beef and the soy moratoriums. There's things happening on paper. People seem committed, but we're still getting so much deforestation. And it's been a decent amount of time since this has started. And that's what made me think, well, maybe there's something deeper. And that's why I mentioned earlier that there's a lot of research, attention, funding, media about practical and technical solutions. But I think it's about something deeper than that. And I think, bringing these philosophical questions or personal questions or questions about values into the mainstream when we talk about environmental issues in whatever way that is, whether you work in communications or you work in business or you work in banking, kind of having a mandate that is part of this question.
It's okay.
It's not about just finding the right solution or funding or what politics we do. And I think this is across society. We kind of put philosophy and personal and values into this little spiritual box over here. But trying to bridge that with the reality is that if we create all the most perfect technical solutions to all these problems, if people don't want to put them in place, then they're not going to change anything. So,
well, I think it's absolutely fascinating. Thanks for talking to us, Roisin. And
Thank you.
Really, looking forward to your publications. And even if it's blogs and things like this, I think we need to get these findings out there, because I think they will help people get a bit of a sense. It's really, for me, it represents the first time people have stepped back from the coalface of trying to implement these things and saying, how are we going and what's going on?
Yeah.
What are we finding here? And there's information in there that would suggest that both companies and NGOs could do things in a slightly different way that could nonetheless really have a big impact.
Yeah.
Communication, collaboration, beyond compliance. I think we've got the name for the podcast.
Perfect.
Thanks so much.
Right, thanks, Scott.
You've been listening to The Role of Values in No Deforestation Policies, a KUI podcast with Roisin Mortimer. Roisin's done some great study, and I think her findings have really helped us get a bit of a grip on what we need to do to try and get those personal and company values more into the discussion, more into the driving seat behind just commercial concerns around risk management. I found it particularly interesting how she spoke about the philosophy and personal values being in one box separated over here and the technical solutions being in a different box. We need to bring those two boxes together. Absolutely fascinating. I'm Scott Poynton. Thanks for listening.